Hello and welcome to episode 75 of All the Horrible Things. We're very excited to have made it to 75, and I think it's amazing what we're talking about today, because it's one of the best things I think we've watched over the course of the whole podcast in terms of TV series, certainly TV series on Netflix, to be even more minute.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. And it's no surprise that it comes from Mike Flanagan. Mike Flanagan is a machine of just churning out not just quality work, but really expansive. How is he doing this is my question.
Well, I think he kind of explained it within the fall of the House of Usher, because it was very clear he made a deal with the devil.
Yeah.
That's why he's the big shot he now is, getting whatever cast he wants for The Life of Chuck or something. It's a Stephen King adaptation coming up.
Yeah. And he, in my opinion, is one of the better Stephen King adapters.
Yes. Just in a recent cast, we talked about Dr. Sleep and how we were impressed with what he did there. I want to focus more on his TV series. Where does this rank with you in terms of his?
I was just talking about that yesterday because someone was asking me if they should watch The Fall of the House of Usher, and I said absolutely, and they said, is it better? It's funny that everyone compares, even though I don't believe it was a bad show. I'm talking about Bly Manor.
Bly Manor was definitely the weakest of the series thus far.
Right. And I think everyone agrees on that. And then I think as far as a benchmark goes, I think everyone compares all of his good stuff to Hill House, The Haunting of Hill House.
I do applaud what he was attempting for in Bly, though, because he tried to do like a more romantic horror, you know?
Yeah, gothic romantic horror, absolutely.
And in terms of just themes, I got to give him props for that. But yeah, comparatively, what are you thinking?
Well, I'm also going to throw in there Midnight Mass, because that's another hit or miss for a lot of people. And I enjoyed it because I thought it was such an interesting...
It was a hit for me. No issues with Midnight Mass.
So I would say I think The Haunting of Hill House still might be my favorite just because it was so fresh. And then I would put The Fall of the House of Usher, then Midnight Mass, and then The Haunting of Bly Manor.
What about Midnight Club? You were the big Midnight Club guy for a second.
I thought Midnight Club had a lot of potential too, because they had it's some of the actors that appear in, which is classic Mike Flanagan. Some of the actors who were stars on the Midnight Club. I just thought it was so reminiscent of the stuff I was watching as a kid, my gateway horror, like Are You Afraid of the Dark? And I saw what the show could have been, and clearly no one else liked it. But I would put that before Bly Manor, and then Bly Manor last. That's a good point.
Was the first one ultimately based on The Turn of the Screw by Henry James? I mean, he loosely bases a lot of these on existent literature. I think it was The Turn of the Screw for that one, and I remember I saw the black and white version of that, and it was actually pretty creepy. Scary as just a one-off movie from, I want to say it was in black and white. Certainly, could have been the 50s or maybe even late 40s. But this one obviously is Poe-centric. Where do you stand on Mr. Edgar Allan Poe?
Well, I mean, I think it's unfortunate. A lot of people forget how great of a writer Edgar Allan Poe was, and as far as like the creepy factor, he gets outshined a little bit by like Lovecraft, and as far as like American authors, who really kind of paved the way. I'm a fan. It kind of reminds me of Stephen King's short stories. I love authors who put together short stories, and I was super curious when you find out that this was based off of a short story. And I think, Mike Flanagan did a really great job of updating this and making it relevant and, taking what small of a story it was and blowing it up here. And I think he did Edgar Allan Poe some really good justice here.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, there is a master list of all of the references to Poe's work,
Mm-hmm.
and it's ginormous. I maybe at the end I'll prattle off some of the big ones, but the most obvious ones that we can talk about, I think, are character names and certainly the names of the episodes as we
Yeah,
kind of dive into it. If you're down for forward movement into the first episode and how it's set up.
absolutely. I also just want to give a huge shout out to Bruce Greenwood here. I thought Bruce Greenwood did such an amazing job carrying this entire series
Yeah.
kind of on his back. Some of the monologues these actors are rattling off, I'm like, how they're like 3-page monologues.
Yeah, it's Shakespearean in a way, and that's another thing I just wanted to note about Poe is like he was prolific, not as prolific as Stephen King, but the difference was Poe was also writing poetry as well. You know what I mean? His prose and ability to use syntax in an interesting, unique way is part of what makes him so special and why so many people read him. You know, coming up in English courses. It has a timeless nature to it, and I think that's what this show does so well. The first episode being Midnight Dreary, certainly an allusion to one of the lines. Mm-hmm. And what did you think about the zombie mom? We get the story of our two leads, Bruce and Maddie. I'm sorry, Mary McDonnell, who plays Maddie. So you got Roderick and Madeline Usher. Some poor kids with the mom who's getting kind of abused, one might say, by her employer, who also happens to be the baby daddy.
Yeah, what a real knob job this guy was. I mean, really taking advantage of a family here. And it really is sad that this woman didn't have much of a life outside of her work. It seems like she's working on the weekend. Like, he worked her to death. And the kids were, bastards in that sense, that this man who lived right down the street. And it is really great in episode 1, you find out adult Roderick ended up buying the entire block or neighborhood or whatever it is. But I thought it was a really interesting not just introduction to our two main characters here, but the mom and her influence, because clearly she sets the pathway for their entire career, which is really set on vendetta and revenge here. Right. But also so sad that the mother, wouldn't take medicine, wouldn't do all these things. It's so ironic. They start there's this pharmaceutical company that she works for. She refuses to take it. It's clearly she doesn't trust this man and the poison he's spitting out there. And it just puts everything into motion so well.
I completely agree. Like, is she Jehovah's Witness or something? She's some sort of denomination that will not take any. But that's something to note. Is she's crazy religious, right?
Yes.
So the kids immediately are going to have some sort of superstitious belief, especially when it seemed like she was dead when they buried her, and to come back. So you've already got that like baked in with them, and then the medicine being absent, and ultimately the company in which they inherit and just make all of their money off of painkillers, which their mom suffered from. I feel like there was really excellent development early on that you see play off as it goes through the entire series, even just the zombie mom, who then we get the zombie sister at the end, right?
Yeah.
When you think they're dead, they're not. And poor Roderick, man. Do you have sympathy for this character? This multi-bajillion year. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't think you can. Because the only way you could sympathize is that there was no adult like a mentor in their life. Their mom basically tried to drill in the religious stuff, but clearly it didn't take. And these kids now grow up they're very selfish. They don't care who gets hurt. So they're very well aware of what they're doing. So I don't think you can sympathize.
Does Roderick live a normal life if it isn't for Maddie? Is Maddie could Roderick have been a good person, is what I'm saying, because it's very clear Madeline wouldn't. She is the most like ruthless, dogged executive woman I've seen in a horror, I would say. She's amazing. And it's so great to see Mary McDonnell in such a ruthless role. You know, she was the caregiver in Battlestar, the mother figure. And here she's the childless aunt who really is the one in control of everything. What do you think? Does Roderick live a life with Annabelle Lee that is not just...
Well, I think his sister, I mean, he had a really nice thing going. He had a wife and child. And I think Madeline is like the devil on his shoulder, who is just, you know, whenever he wants to do the right thing, she pushes him in this different direction for their revenge. I think we find out at one point, Verna, who is able to tell people what they kind of were supposed to be if they didn't go down this path. Yes. And wasn't Roderick was supposed to be like a poet, right? Wasn't he supposed to?
That's right.
There you go. He's Edgar Allan Poe. He's the poet. And I think if his sister wasn't present there to remind him of the dirty work that they needed to do, he may have had I think he had a good head on his shoulders. I think they both did initially, but I think she really is the driving force here for evil.
And then, of course, some of his children wouldn't exist, or probably wouldn't exist. But, of course, we'd have Freddie and Tamerlane, who would have been spared if he went that direction as well. I can't remember what she said he would be. Do you? A dentist? Was that it?
Yes,
it was ironically a dentist.
It was a dentist, which is, just
emerges
poetic.
Its head rather ugly.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. See, let's talk about these kids. We don't get to them until the second one. I mean, we actually do meet Frederick and Tamerlane as children in this one.
Yeah. Yes.
But we also get to meet Dupine for the first time. This is our through line, is this interview with a vampire-esque sort of thing, because you could argue Roderick is a vampire of sorts, sucking the life out of people.
Something else Mike Flanagan really loves to do are time jumps, you know, flashbacks and flash forwards, which I think this may have been the most successful version of that out of all of his projects as far as jumping around on timelines.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the rivalry between these two, to see it play out and how ultimately they were working together for a moment there, trying to take down Big Pharma. Yeah. And then because of Madeline, Roderick switches gears and he betrays Dupine. And then to have these two essentially mortal enemies there at the end. And in a sense, you could argue Dupine saying that there was an informant within the family in this very first episode is central to their deaths as well, just as connected.
Oh, I think it's pivotal. I think Dupine's plan here, where he finally, you know, decides to play on their level of dirtiness, is the fall of the House of Usher. I think it's brilliantly, you know, like they're turning against each other. But I mean, out of all these children, so we meet Frederick, what do they call him, Froderick? That Henry Thomas plays this character so well, and you don't see him like this too often. But he may have been the worst of them all, because he had a really nice thing going there with his wife and his child, and Lenore, who from Dr. Sleep, also a fantastic actor here, and they have a really great child. So they were doing something right, which is why I think his turn makes him the worst of them all.
I agree, and that's something I wanted to talk to you about, maybe as we talk a little bit more about them. But I started to think of this as kind of like a prolonged Seven in a way, and the kids and Roderick all being representative of one of the seven deadly sins. So I'm curious, as we go through them and understand their motives and their deaths too, what you might ascribe to them. But for Freddie, I wrestle with, because do you think he's then more of a jealousy because he thinks his wife has had the affair with his brother? or when he does have that thought, we see the true wrath side of him. He's really just an angry man. And that's where like then the drug use comes in. And I got to be honest with you, I feel like a lot of them are guilty of every one of the sins. I'm just wondering if in the back of his head he kind of steered each one toward one of those sins.
Yeah, that's really great.
Because let's I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I was going to say, I think I think all of these children are so, what is the right term here? They're easily persuaded or pushed in the right direction. I think that's shown immediately when they start to turn on each other. They just hear one thing and they're like, they go down that path. But Verna, who is the puppet master here, does play a big part into pushing them down those paths as well.
So Verna is essentially, at first, what did you think she was? Because we come to learn that she's kind of the devil, right? Are we going with the devil here?
Yeah, I would say so.
Dr. Faustus tale. I mean, even though Poe is very original, I mean, Dr. Faustus is bleeding in here too with the making of the deal of the devil.
Well, it took me a few episodes, and I'm a little embarrassed why it took me so long to realize that Verna was just an anagram for Raven. And
oh, thank you, because I looked up the meaning of Verna, and I was trying to put an application on it meaning, what does it say here? Springtime, the birth of spring, born in spring. That's what Verna means.
Okay. So I was just looking at...
She does give them all this amazing blossoming.
Yeah, it's not just them. It's all these other people you find out throughout history that she's given this new life to, and it's all greed related. But in my head, I was like, wait, Verna, V-E-R, Raven. And then like when you go to her bar and you see the bar, there's the Raven like on the shelf. There's the Raven outside as like the statue, and I believe at one point. The Raven is described within the series too as being like this messenger. But yeah, I would argue that Verna is the devil. Yes, this is the devil in the crossroads. Like you could go down this path or this path.
Yeah. Which I thought. I mean, she did it so well, and to get to see her play so many different parts too, because she shows up in everybody's death episode as somebody else, even though she looks exactly the same, because this is corroborated when they actually do start to try and make her, when Maddie and Roderick are like getting CCTV footage. It's her same face. She's not appearing like a different person, and we just see this as the audience. That's her. That's Carla Gugino for everyone.
Yeah. That is super interesting. Yeah, I mean this.
Well, I want to ask you about episode 2 and Prospero, right? Who goes by Perry. So this is there's a lot of actually Shakespeare references in this as well, and certainly Prospero is our lead character in The Tempest, who essentially controls other people, kind of in the way that Prospero's the one putting on this wild affair. He's putting the magic together. He's the wizard sort of archetype here, in a sense, but. For me, he's gluttony. I know there's lust involved there, but to me, gluttony, because he wants it all. He wants the drugs, the sex, the partying, all at the same, everything. It's not just one thing.
Yeah, even when he's pitching his nightclub idea, which is like not even a fully fledged like pitch here, and it's just for it's totally based in class, right? He just wants
$10,000 cover fee, stuff like that. He's the least likable, maybe. I mean,
yes, yeah.
I didn't see a lot of him.
I think that's why
I hated him.
Same. I was gonna say I hated him. I mean, I thought he's a great actor, and that's why we hate him so much, because he sold it. But I think that's also why he's the first to go. He's
yes.
And plus, he tried to
seduce his sister-in-law, and ultimately leads to her getting completely acid rained. Oh. I'd rather not survive, but apparently we do learn later that she does get a bunch of skin grafts, and it's like the one redemptive feature of the family.
Yeah.
But how much did you love that build up to that scene? Like, I was like, okay, good luck, other deaths. you're not going to live up to this. And part of me feels like that was true until the very last one. They're all fun, but this was the best, right? Acid rating of all the people you would hate that just like are ruining the world together with the actual chemical waste that his father had put in the tanks above. Amazing. To like hide them. Yeah. Beautiful irony. And in that sense, it certainly is Roderick that is the reason he's dead, you know?
Absolutely.
Mean, there, but his dad's acids is what took him down.
And it is a amazing death when you see everybody sort of like melting and almost melding together. And it reminded me of the 1989 horror film Society, where it's about a boy who discovers his family is part of this gruesome orgy cult for the social elite. Wow. And there's this, the whole idea, this is like body horror, where people are like melding together in this very similar way. And I don't know if it was inspired for this. For me, it that's what it screamed.
It was great body horror, and that's what I like. Is like, not only is the potential 7 deadly sins overlay, but I feel like each person has kind of its own subgenre of horror in the way things go down for each of them. Yeah, this is an interesting little tidbit from episode 2 is called "The Mask of the Red Death." And Perry's death by raining acid is based on the story "The Mask of the Red Death," which is a parties where the guests all suddenly start dying of a bleeding disease. So that's what that one's based on, which I found interesting. But also in this one, we are introduced to Rufus Griswold, which was a very purposefully named character here. He's the Fornato executive, obviously, the douchebag, who's ultimately the jester at the end. That was a real-life person, Poe's nemesis, who had written scathing obituary for him under a pseudonym. So it was like the guy that was the biggest jerk face becomes our biggest jerk face in the show.
Yeah.
As much as I hate Perry, this guy was different. At least Perry's trying to make people happy, right? He's trying to be the wizard. But Rufus here is a real life bad guy. He's like Weinstein plus
you're right.
Bezos combined. He's a jerk.
He is the epitome of the changing of times as far as like the workforce goes. You know, he is almost immediately tries to he sexually harasses Madeline. And, basically offers her the quid pro quo of like, I want to take you home just to try to get ahead. He is this part of our society that is, everything that's wrong with it is like prevents growth. It's a different type of greed, not just financial, but about not letting women advance. And Madeline could have been running that company as a child. She's so brilliant. And this guy doesn't have any real ideas. He buys up other companies, takes their product. He is, I would say, the Usher's arch nemesis as well.
Yeah, and he's certainly at first Dupin, Sergeant Dupin's biggest nemesis, or inspector at this point, because he's going around, or was he a lawyer when he was going to the graves to look if the bodies had died via the pharmaceuticals from?
I was a little confused about that timeline as well, because I think he had to have a law degree at some point, because he was doing like investigative, like for a firm he was investigating. So I think he was a lawyer. Otherwise, he was inspired to become a lawyer after the Ushers, play him.
He was an insurance investigator, I guess you could say, ultimately, because you remember he had that interaction with his boss in the olden times.
Yes.
But the pharmaceutical trials is also essential to what sets everything off and gets him to come in cahoots with Roderick, which then in turn enables Roderick to portray him to then own the company. Right. I just, like you said, the way that what's his face? The director, Mike Flanagan, is able to like weave all of these characters and these plots, and then using a source material as well.
Yeah,
it's a feat. I mean, some people out there have given this shit and said, okay, this is House of Usher is missing the passion that is central to Poe's work. And I feel like maybe if it's not overtly on the screen, the passion is there with what Mike Flanagan has done with such sheer amount of source.
Yeah, I certainly don't understand the criticism of this series when I think we should be celebrating it instead of, criticizing it, because I think it's one of the better series we've seen in a while, like you said at the top of the show. And I love how people need to find something wrong with it. Like there's just, it doesn't help.
What more could you have asked for? We can talk about what were our issues later, but
right.
I think we should keep running with the episodes and who dies in the episode.
Yeah.
So Perry's melted. Then we move on. Griswold is taking credit for the pill in episode 3, the murder in the Rue Morgue. Roderick puts the chemicals in there, kills his own son. We see Vic fails her test. This is where we start to get a little bit more about Victorine and her heart mesh equipment.
Right.
Victorine certainly being connected to the telltale heart, right? Because when we do get to her episode, she starts hearing things. But this is not her episode in terms of death. This is Camille's episode. And certainly we have seen Camille in a lot of his other projects as well.
Yeah.
What is this actress's name?
It's
Kate Siegel, right? This was a new role for her. She's this multimedia super bitch, I guess you could say, who just is able to spin everything, right? I was seeing, what was it? That Kelly woman that worked for Trump, that could spin stuff.
Kellyanne
Conway. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting from her.
Sure.
And she has these 2 assistants that we learn are her sex slaves too.
Yeah. They signed a contract.
Was the hardest to pin down for me in terms of sin. I went with lust in the end because of how weird the sex stuff was. And it was lust because she demanded them, and it wasn't about them. It was about the sex sort of thing.
It was about pleasure purely for herself. Yes.
That's the one I'd give her.
And this actor, by the way, is Mike Flanagan's wife.
Oh, Kate Siegel is his wife?
Yeah. She appears in just about everything. I think the first project that she stars in is Hush. But I think she did a good job here. As I think almost every time we see her in something, she's very likable. And I love that it was really hard to try to like her. She is almost I've already said Freddie is the worst, but she is on top of trying to find which one of her siblings is the one who is the informant.
Right. And she's trying to sniff out Victorine.
Yes. And how could you possibly do that? Go against your own family. So it is a level of just awfulness.
Especially when she was one of the bastards, as they call them. The only 2 legitimate children that were born under wedlock are the first 2, Freddie and Tamerlane. The rest are bastards, and the bastards are cannibalizing themselves in a way when they should be working together.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was looking into her because of the informant thing. All of that wouldn't have happened were it not for Dupine. But this is an interesting episode because Verna talks to 3 children. I think it's the only episode where she talks to 3 that are alive. And she sees, obviously, Camille at the end, where she becomes the chimp or inhabits the chimp. I'm unclear what happened with the chimp mauling death at the end there.
There's a lot of weird animal. I mean, there's the cat, that she also, I think, at some point embodies. So I think she does become the chimp, at least to get the chimp into the proper space and then lets it do its thing.
She is the devil. She does poof like dust later in the show. So I guess that makes sense.
Yes.
Chimp death fun. We did just watch No Pleasure, so it wasn't as effective, I think, as it might otherwise have been. And certainly after the acid rain, that didn't do it for me. But they set up 2 future deaths because we have Verna also posing as a sex worker visiting Tamerlane and her husband Bill. And something that I really hadn't heard a lot about, this fetish called cuckween? Cuckween? Where it's not like a cuckold, but it's a woman cuckold who likes to see her man with another woman.
Yeah, that's.
I hadn't heard the word. Let's put it. The concept, I guess, is
the term was new to me as well.
But yeah.
But of course,
that was the new one.
Yeah.
But that made her so interesting because this is a psychology I've never really seen before.
It says a lot about her character and about how she's clearly one of the most unhappy out of all of the children. And they all live lies. You know, they don't have real relationships with anyone except for themselves. It's really disturbing to know that someone could get pleasure out of watching, not even just with her husband, but taking on the role as herself and to talk about their days.
That's next level for sure.
To live out what she would think is somewhat of a normal life that she's not capable of having a normal conversation with her husband. It was very, very interesting.
Her envy, right? Because she's like almost like this weird inverse of envy where she wants to create something to be jealous of. She wants to create something to want because maybe growing up she's never had want for anything. So the only thing she kind of do it with is with stuff that's more interactive, like sex, interactive sort of business. And that her poor husband just used as a tool, literally, for her pleasure. But then, of course, the last one that she visits is, she runs into Victorine and sets herself up to be the patient for Dr. Ruiz to try the first human test with the heart mesh.
She really plays her.
She bopped around in episode 3. A lot was set up in episode 3. I thought it was one of the better ones. I just wish that the death was a little more affecting.
Sure.
You got chimps, though. Chimps, you got to use them.
Yeah. I mean, also, the chimps deserved their revenge as well because testing on animals is disgusting.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so a quick one on this one. Camille's death by primate is based on the murders in the Rue Morgue. I guess something of that nature does happen in that one, so that kind of explains why that was used there. And Verna's name tag, when she's the security guard there at the end, dealing with Camille, is Le Bon, which is a name used in Rue Morgue as well, the story. So there's so many Easter eggs in this. It's ridiculous.
There really is. There's a lot going on here. Tell me what you thought of Leo. Leo.
Okay, yes.
I don't know. I mean, because he's the one who's obviously the most influenced by drugs.
Yes. He's sloth to me.
Sloth.
He owns a video game company. He really doesn't do anything.
He doesn't
He's
do
the one
the
that has
work.
the money, puts it out, and then just is around getting drunk and getting high.
Lazy.
And ultimately having affairs, we learn early on with him, right?
Yep.
Because he does have this, is it a husband or a boyfriend? Whatever it is, he's cheating on this person.
Yeah.
He's just lazy. He can't do shit for shit. And of course he does give poor Freddie a big bag of cocaine when Freddie thinks that his wife might have been cheating on him with his brother potentially.
His way to deal with it was
I liked Leo. It was a fun character to watch. The episode prior to this, he finds the cat dead.
Right.
The black cat, of course, which is what this episode is called as we move into his. Yeah. And he can't remember doing it, but he cleans up after it, and then he goes to get a new cat. And who do we have there but Verna as our veterinarian now? Yeah,
that was pretty amazing. And I love the setup. We're like, oh, no, that cat's not for sale or adoption, like, oh, well, I need that one, and I will pay anything for it. It's
reverse psychology.
Yeah, and it's there's no limits to what an usher will do to get what they want, and it's money. It's mostly like I will pay you whatever you need. It also reminded me a lot of like the TV show Succession. Like money solves everything, and people who don't have money are beneath us. So he was really interesting to me. Because he almost seemed like the most normal in a weird way.
I know.
Like he didn't necessarily. I mean, his biggest issue was his drug addiction, but it seemed like people went to him to almost like talk to him. Like
you're right. Camille had very intimate one-on-ones with him. Perry had one-on-one with him. Freddy goes to him for help.
Freddy
we
goes
don't really see him deal with his Tamerlane or Vic. Does
Yeah.
Vic deal with him much?
Well, people just
You're right. No, he is kind of the heart in a sense. So when we see him go batshit crazy, thinking that the black cat's in the wall, it's that much more tragic. He was the one that I was probably, of course, next to Verna's very last kill, that are not Roderick and Maddie. I did care, and it was sad because, first of all, the cat that he cleaned up wasn't actually Pluto, the cat. Because Pluto the cat is alive at the end, and that's the cat that's on the railing when he falls off.
Right.
So I don't know where that other cat came from.
I don't know. I think it was just
3 cats involved here.
Yep. I think it was just a bit of a mind fuck. But yeah, he was the one. He was like, people went to him instead of their father to talk to. It was interesting to try to. I mean, I'm sure that was really interesting role to play.
Yeah. In this episode as well is really important that Verna is finally made, and that it's revealed that Maddie remembers her now from the bar. And Pym is on the job, and Pym is such an amazing character that we haven't even discussed.
I was going to say,
throughout the whole thing, great. This man survives the show. And at first, I should have known. I'm like, I didn't recognize Hamill at first. Let's put it that way.
Oh, okay.
He was so immersed. I felt like he created such an awesome character there.
Yeah.
I heard a little bit of his Batman animated Joker in the guy's voice sometime. But what a kick-ass character and lore that they ultimately give him when Roderick and Dupine are talking about him. Like, Roderick just had all these like fantasies about what he has done, not even knowing. You know what I mean? Because he's that like majestic a creature.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm surprised we didn't bring up Pym earlier. The whole backstory on his character too, that Roderick ends up explaining about the expedition. Yes, it's crazy.
It was likely cannibalism, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
He definitely has. But yeah, let's skip a little bit there. He's offered a deal with the devil, and he doesn't take it. He's the only one we see that's offered a deal that doesn't take it. And he does go to jail, but he's accepting of what should happen. And,
for his crimes, for his own crimes that he's committed in the name of Usher.
The blood-sucking lawyer is the only one with integrity, and is willing to live his honest self.
I would argue that there is someone better than him. Well, actually, maybe 2 people better than him. And I would say that is probably Juno, who we also haven't talked about, and Lenore. And they seem to me, they seem to me to have just been like guilty by association. Like Juno has been basically an experiment for Roderick. And he may have pulled her off the streets, but she realizes that this is not the better life. Money doesn't equal happiness. But I think I think there are people who are just associated with the Ushers who survive. Well, except for Lenore. But
like you said, before all this mayhem, pardon me, Lenore was in a loving family. Everything was sort of normal. I mean, who doesn't want a bowling alley in their living room? But they seemed copacetic. Granted, we learned the mom is not satisfied, right? If she's willing to go to this party. Right. So there's definitely underlying issues. But I think they kept it together enough to raise a kid that was pretty awesome. Lenore was...
She was good.
The shining gem of the family. Right. When thankfully she gets to live on via AI, which is a subplot we really hadn't mentioned too much.
No,
and how Madeline has kind of gone in the direction of technology instead of the pharmaceuticals. And then when she does kind of try and do a coup at the end, a soft coup, let's call it.
Right.
She's trying to tell the investors, the board, that we are going to become an AI company. And of course, Lenore is the first one to have herself AI'd, which is so great. At the end, we think that Roderick is texting her when he's really just texting her AI. Because she dies.
It's just funny that the goal here is just to live forever. It's funny, like the rich just want to live forever.
Yeah, no, that's a
Immortalized.
huge aspect throughout Poe too. The idea of entombment pops up a lot in Poe stuff.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of
And
Egyptian references here.
yes, the sapphire eyes that we see Maddie come out of the basement with. I want to talk about that particular moment in a little bit.
Sure.
Let's go back and talk about Victorine's episode.
Yeah.
Her mesh is failing. She's supposed to get Verna in there for a surgery with her lover, Dr. Ruiz. And Ruiz doesn't want anything to do with this. She's not doing it. She's not having it. And she's threatening to essentially take down the Ushers herself.
Right.
So reflexively, I guess, I don't know. I think Victorine's a little worse than I think other people might give her credit for being all right. But I don't know. I mean, she to me is pride, right? Mm-hmm. She's trying to make everyone proud around her. But to then pick up a bookend, which is appropriate given all of this, and then whip it at the back of her head. That was a grisly death. One of the grislier moments were about characters that were, good, that were nice, that didn't deserve this, didn't deserve to have it coming.
Guilty by association again. And I think the way that Flanagan then implements the telltale heart with the beating is done so well.
The beating
here.
of the flesh mesh is so great.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Because that's such an iconic thing. Telltale heart pumping below the guy who killed him, his murderer. Yeah. The murderer is hearing his victim's heart. And she does. She murders her, the only person that, loved her. And then she, blocks it out. That's a little weird to me. Was that Verna that did that to her, do you think? Or was that her own psychosis? Doesn't matter. Probably not.
Right. Probably doesn't matter, but I think you're right. I think it's her own psychosis. But yeah, it's what's interesting to me is that Roderick, in his own selfish way, has made this project, the most important thing because he thinks it's going to help him with his own autoimmune.
Yes, that's right. She doesn't even know she's trying to keep him alive, but that's why the pressure is on because he has this ailment.
Yeah.
What do you think about the end? I loved, I guess, the reveal, let's say, of her there with the heart. Mm-hmm. But then her suicide, lackluster, right?
Yeah. I think
stabbed to the self.
The thing I thought was more interesting was that Roderick also heard the beating of the heart.
That's true.
I thought that was interesting, and I was really kind of
just the fact that it happened in front of him, I guess, gives it more impact too. Watching your own daughter, kill herself in front of you, that I guess adds to the horror element. And of course, we forgot to mention all of these dead kids are haunting him throughout the present day scenes. Yeah, and looking as they would when they were killed. So. Let's talk about the second to last child, the eldest daughter, Tamerlane's episode Goldbug. She has just broken up with Bill. She's taken on the whole enterprise herself. She's done with him. She's going to be the one that gives the speech and be the face of it. But she's not sleeping. So she's hallucinating no other.
There are a couple moments where you wonder, wait, was Bill really there? Or was she just hallucinating that? But then the keys are left there and She does such it's an amazing performance, but the way she just pushes her husband out, it was brutal. It was brutal. There's this person there who supports her husband through all of this. And for her to just sort of, and she's made him do all of these things. I don't think the sex with strangers was his idea. And
no, definitely wasn't. And the way she kind of frames him as literally a thing to her, an object. And hey, when we met that day, I had two other people where I was okay, I need to get these guys on board with my brand. Essentially psychopathic Gwyneth Paltrow goopster.
Right.
At this point. So... That speech was amazing. So she gets up there and then she's just failing so hard, seeing things that aren't there. Of course, seeing Verna, who at this point she thinks is the sex worker that has now stolen her husband. That's where the envy stuff comes in for me. And then the sex tape of Bill and Verna is then playing, and she whips the microphone stand at Verna, who's not there, instead hitting Juno square in the head.
Poor Juno, and Juno is like
she's trying to be supportive.
I know. Juno thought that there was moments where she's talking directly to her. She's like, I'm just here to support you, and then next thing you know, the microphone stand whacks her right in the head. Brutal.
That was a really enjoyable little thread. Then we have Maddie, who's also there, sees Verna in the audience, runs over to her, and then she turns to smoke.
Yeah.
Is that like the first official time we know she's not corporeal? I guess maybe
supernatural,
the chimp business alludes to it, but this is like very ghostly sort of thing that we hadn't seen before.
Yeah, that was super interesting how they did that. I mean, because the other times it's sort of just left as a mystery, like you had said earlier about the chimp with the phone. She takes a photo of it and disappears. Or I thought that was a really interesting way that it was done.
It was an evolution to the reveal of what she was. I felt like it wasn't super clear at first.
Yeah.
But let's talk about her death, because hers was one of my favorites. I love this. She's getting taunted by Verna in the mirrors because all her houses is mirrored. So that's why she also has a lot of pride issues too.
Oh yeah.
But then to be smashed in the mall like crazy, walking over all this mirror glass like she's John McClane or some shit, climbs onto her bed, and then there's like the mirror above, which is like pure vanity sort of thing when you want to watch yourself sleep or whatever it is. Right. American Psycho style. You remember he had the mirrors on the ceiling so he could watch himself.
Sociopath.
Fornicate. Yes. So what does she hit it with? What does she hit the mirror with? I forget what that was, because that might actually have significance.
I think she's using the fire stoker. I think she's been using that to smash the mirrors on her way to the bedroom. And I think she jumps up and she hits it and then just falls back, which was really well done. The falling and then
it was
just
great. Yeah. Sharded up. She got sharded good.
Yeah.
Then the penultimate episode here. So we have Freddy's episode called The Pit and the Pendulum is what the episode's called. And not to bury the lead on this one, but he essentially
gets a pendulum
it's pendulum to the pit, his belly, like split in two pretty much.
Yeah.
And there's moments when they are actually having their interview, Depine and Roderick, where he kind of gets allusions to the ghosts and how they died. And in this one, instead of actual Henry Thomas there as Freddy, you get Annabelle showing up with their kid Fred as a kid, and then his like body slides apart, like alluding to how he's going to get severed in two. That was fun.
It was.
But obviously, this is the episode where Maddie starts to kind of like take control. She's like, okay, it looks like Rod's losing it. I'm going to get the CEO position. And she and Pym are kind of working behind the scenes against him at this stage.
Yeah. Yeah, I was surprised that Pym would do that. I mean, I know he's been working for both of them this whole time, but it seemed to me that his loyalty was to the Ushers in general. So for him to switch sides there,
she gets him to commit suicide in this one, or almost commits suicide, but Verna comes and, forces him to barf
not
the
that
pills
easy.
that are his pills, which would have been a beautiful way for him to go. But now, because their deal has not expired yet, there's some things to do. She has some stuff to do in this final episode.
Yeah.
What did you think about our Henry Thomas all coked up?
I was just about to switch gears to Henry Thomas, because the coked up Henry Thomas first was like, this is kind of funny. Like, this guy is like super paranoid and funny. But then you see him, like the terrible things he's doing to his wife when he's drugging her up.
Oh my God.
First of all, moving her out of the hospital was like,
horrible.
Absolutely horrible. Lying to his daughter that there's specialists coming, and then it's his own insecurities, and it was a really crazy downward spiral of him, like getting to the point where he's literally torturing his wife, who's already, in my opinion, been tortured beyond recognition and didn't deserve any more. I mean, we as the audience know that nothing happened. We know that she went there, but had the opportunity to get out. Verna even gives her a heads up, like, you should leave, and doesn't make it out of there. But I think that was her punishment, right? She's also dealing with what she did by going there, and then the pain. And for him to add this whole other psychotic layer on top of it where he's drugging her, putting up these photos everywhere, just living in a nightmare, and then we see him pull teeth.
The photo stuff, that's where it was like, next one was like, you are sadistic, man.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's why I loved what he got at the end, and I love that Verna laid with him as the blade got closer and closer, because it was kind of like he was paralyzed, similar to how he had been doing to Morella, his wife. Yeah, and it's like, karma, babes, I'll get you.
Yeah.
Finale, did it live up to your expectations?
I thought it did a really great job of like answering questions and bringing things, tying things up. There's the unfortunate bits with Lenore.
Right.
But I thought
Lenore's death was sad.
I thought it did a really great job. So yeah, it did. I thought, some of other shows like this probably wouldn't have done the audience service by like going through each character, like figuring things out, tying things up, answering questions, and still kind of leaving you a little bit like wanting more.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you know who the Jester was the whole time? Because I really didn't know until really, really late. And I loved it because then, like in one of Poe's short stories, he gets bricked up in a wall. This happens in one of the short stories. And what I also found great is they first poison him, right? You have Madeline after they've come back. It is New Year's Eve. It's that same New Year's Eve turning into 1980, which I think is appropriate timing wise because 80s was like the greed decade. Yeah. They go there, they celebrate, what's his face, Rufus Gridwall, all happy. Okay, you saved the company. You're going to be my number 2. And then Madeline, kind of leads him on, gives him a glass of Amontillado. And Amontillado, I don't know if I'm even pronouncing that correctly.
Sounds good to me.
Is a sherry. And a sherry is usually more considered like a feminine wine. And we've talked about in the past, women's choice of murder is poison.
Poison.
And he didn't know it. He's like, he doesn't know it. She mentions he didn't know his sherry for shit. So his machismo was part of what like led to his downfall as well. And that was like a little feminist jab, I think she got in there. But it was a tragic scene, bricking him up because I hated him, but nobody deserves that,
Right. You see, they left a candle in there too to like, she's not completely in the dark. He's gonna like.
For like an hour.
Until the oxygen, like it's, and the candle goes out and he'll probably be dead. But yeah, it was quite the death. It answered the question why they were down there staring at that wall and hearing the jingling. And I thought that was like another fun way of bringing like something full circle.
Yeah. We haven't talked a lot about imagery, but this had one of my favorite images this episode called The Raven, appropriately. Start with Midnight Jury, which is a line from The Raven, the first episode. Bring it back around, like you said. But the image of him when things are just gone to shit. Lenore's died. He's back in his office. And Verna's there kind of explaining, this is it, man. You made this deal. And then he's looking out at all the dead bodies that his company is responsible for just falling from the sky. I mean, you've seen stuff like it before, I guess, but this, to me, given the context and all we've gone through with this character, was really effective, I thought, visually.
Very effective. Raining bodies. Yeah. Yeah, that was, I almost forgot about that shot until you brought that up. That was very well done.
No, I agree. My one big moment that ripped me out and happened in this episode, because up till then I didn't really have any serious beef at all.
Okay.
And I like the fact that Madeline was alive downstairs, even though Roderick had thought he had poisoned her, and she's got the sapphire. But when she comes up the stairs and like busts open the door, it's just so cheesy and campy. She's like,
yeah,
it was such like Halloween sort of like witch like toy that you would hear. You know, it was.
I hear you. Yeah,
ridiculous. That's my only beef, was that moment at the top of the stairs. But I thought it was cool. She strangles him. The house falls down. Dupin exits in time. He gets to go retire. He does see the devil, though.
Yes.
And then Juno liquidates the company, creates rehab centers.
Loved
That's
that.
great. And then in our final shots is Verna, the devil, the raven, visiting their graves and leaving little trinkets for each of them. Did you think they hit it on the nose with all the trinkets?
Yeah, I'd probably need to see a photo to see him again.
Remember
but
them all?
Yeah. No, I thought that was nice. I thought that was another fun thing that was almost bringing it back to the Egyptian.
That's true. You're taking this with you.
Yeah, the scene where Roderick is in the basement with Madeline, and basically, like, you could see that he's been adding all these things in the basement because that's going to be their tomb. Yeah, I thought that was a nice little finish, little cherry on top.
Well, that's all I got. I'm looking forward to his next movie. I'd rather him be doing another series right now, but I'll cross my fingers that he's going to take some of the techniques he's been mastering and make his best movie yet with the Life of Chuck, right? Believe
so. Yeah,
Loki's the lead, I think. Is that correct?
Thomas Hiddleston. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
There's hope. And of course, if you like this one, go back and watch his other stuff. Gerald's Game in particular has Carla Gugino and Bruce Greenwood. And that is such a sleeper hit. I love that one.
So good.
And thanks for listening.
Do all the things. Like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. If you liked this, leave a comment, please.
Yes, please do. And until the next time, stay alive.